Maintenant, on va commencer avec Ignacio Alvarez, puis on va changer en mode anglais, c'est une conférence bilingue. Ignacio Alvarez is an industrial designer, but moved away from physical product to interfaces during his master in design at complexity at the Université de Montréal. He's now a senior UX designer working at JDA Labs. So he's going to speak about creating database with a UX process. So welcome, Ignacio Alvarez.
Hello everyone. Okay, so creating database with the UX process. So is this a slide on? So who I am, well, mentioned a lot already, but so I have graduated in industrial design, and I did my master in design complexity. This is where I started doing UX for the first time. Senior UX designer at the JDA Labs. It's my 4th year. The JDA Labs is a business doing business-to-business softwares, and they do a lot of optimizing and logistic software for big companies. So I started learning about database in the last 2 years, so I'm quite new to it, and I've doing taught learning, so I'm reading books, going to conference. I went actually to the OpenVis conference in Boston, which was really good and interesting, and I realized that I was not the only new guy there, which is nice. And I actually have now a US patent linked to database, and if we have time, I put it at the end, but if I don't, you can always talk to me, or I might present it one day in another conference. So the UX process we use at JDA is the goal-directed design. This is from Kim Goodwin book. It's a really simple process, and a lot of if there's any UX designers here, the process is really similar to other process. So the first step is the research. This is where we really do the interview with the users. And we also do interviews with the stakeholders, and we also look at other competitors and the trends in the business. So what's going on? And it's important to do this because it really puts the center, your design, it puts the user in the center of your design. The next step is modeling. So this is where we take all the raw data and we compile it to make it models like the personas or experience flows. The most important part here is to find the goals. What are they trying to achieve? What they are trying to do with your interface or your software. Afterward, you have the requirements. This is where you define the users, the business, and the technical needs. So it's kind of a checklist that you have to complete, and you have to do all this, input all this in your software. And if you miss something, you're missing needs of the users, right? Afterwards, you do the framework. So this is not so far from journalism. You are doing the wireframes, you're doing the sketch, you're doing the information architecture, and you're doing the flows as well. At that point, you do the user testing. So before you even start doing the details and trying to figure out all the what are the colors and everything, you do user testing because you can iterate really quickly. You can know what's work well, what doesn't work well. And then you do with the detail design, where you do all those details, and you can also start doing the specs for the developers. And you ensure success. That means that you are with the developers and they are building it, and you make sure that they have everything. You answer the questions, and you also look at the quality. Are they doing it right, or do you have to do anything different? And this is really an iterative process, right? So you could be already in the framework and realize that you're missing something and go back to research. So it's not a step-by-step thing, right? You can always go back and forth in this process. So I'm going to talk about this process, but what it's linked with data viz. Okay, so when you're doing the research, you have no idea that you're going to do data visualization. You're only trying to understand what are the goals of your users, what are their needs, what are the challenges, the frustrations, what are the other interactions they have with other users, how does it work, how does their work works. So after that, you can have an idea of, okay, so what information do they need to be successful? What is the level of detail they need of this information? And at that point, they could mention that, hey, we want a data visualization because I saw another app that has this and it's cool and that's what I want. And But you don't have to take that for granted, because a lot of times you can also realize, wait, you want this, you want a data visualization, but I can solve your problem in an easier way, and it could be the best solution for your need. So you could keep it in, but it's not, don't take it for granted. Also, what is the context of use? So if I talk in my business, imagine a warehouse picker. So that's somebody that has to go pick the boxes, put it in the truck, right? And create those pallets and put it in trucks. If you do a data visualization for him, for some reason, you will realize that he has something mobility, right? He has to probably have something that he can travel with. So it must be touchable. It must be very simple, not complex. It doesn't have to do so much interaction, right? You have to think about that. The context is really important. And all this raw data, you put it in the modeling phase. So the modeling phase is where you create those personas. So it's kind of general people. You try to build general people out of all the details you gathered, and you build experience flow. So those are all the steps they do right now to complete their task. And where are the frustrations on those steps? What are the tools they use on those steps? So this is what it looks like. So this is what I've done for a client. So this is a persona and an experience flow. And again, here you don't even know that you're going to do data visualization. You kind of start having an idea that maybe this will solve a problem. But the mistake I did a couple of times is go ahead and start sketching right away. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. And this would be a great idea. And I sketch. But the main issue with this is that once you start doing this, you're just putting ideas over ideas. Because you start remembering, oh yeah, but he also needed this and also needed that. And maybe the business needs. So your stakeholders might have said, oh, but we also need this. So you just add idea on top of idea. So because you don't have the full picture of it. This is where it's important to do the requirement list before. And the requirement list is really just a checklist, right? So it's something that looks like this. So you have all the needs there that you've put together. And like a lot of UX guru mentioned, it's important to put in your sentences the user in the center. So that means the user should have the ability to do that. He should have the ability to see this, to be able to interact with that. But one of the mistakes that people make is that they actually write it down as a solution. So for example, so ability to filter the line chart using a legend as toggle. So you already put that it's going to be a line chart. You already put that there's going to be a legend that you toggle. So you actually you're not solving a problem. You're just proposing a solution. Instead, if I say ability to complexify or reduce the visualization of data to allow exploration, I'm not really good at writing those things. But it gives more options, right? You can say, oh, well, there's a lot of ways of doing this. I could do drag and drops. I could do checklists. I could still use this. Maybe this is the best solution, but I'm not cutting myself out. And so it's important to really be general and say what is the actual need of the user and not a solution. And this brings me to framework. So framework is not that far from journalism at that point for data visualization. You're actually really just doing the skeleton of it. You're trying to think all the information architecture, the flows that the user are going to do, and you're just having those kind of sketches. And you put it down, and you could use Axure, you could use Illustrator, you could use a lot of different tools that exist right now for those. And it's not that much important what to use. So this is the demand workbench. So it's the same example I had before from the requirement list. And as you can see, I have different ideas, but it starts always with, okay, I need a chart on top and a grid below. And this is because requirements told me that, yes, they need to be able to see variability in this graph. So they need to be to understand, oh, what are the exceptions that's going on in here? So is there a peak somewhere? Should I focus my attention on that peak? But the user also needs to, hey, I need to be able to change the data below. So I need to be able to quickly change the data. So that's why I started thinking, yeah, I need to be able to connect both. And maybe even the line chart on top, on the middle could be together. So it's all linked. So you see, this is where it's because I had the requirement list before that I could do this. Another thing that can come in by doing the framework is you start realizing, and this is not a framework, this is more detailed design, but it's just for the context. So as you can see here, predicted OTF. So this is the predictive on-time fulfillment. My stakeholders are like, yeah, we need a dashboard and everything needs to be graphs and it needs to be, yeah, put that on a donut chart. But at the end, you look at it and you're like, you have two values and I'm just wasting space for nothing. Instead, I could just have one thing and it would be enough, right? The user doesn't need that chart necessarily. So this is where you realize, oh, well, maybe I don't need a data visualization. Maybe that's too much. That's not necessary for what I'm trying to do. This is a really simple example though, but it's just to explain. And then you go to user testing, which is extremely important. This is where you really understand, does it work or not? And the more complex your data visualization is, the more you're gonna get feedback out of it. And so you're gonna realize, oh, I took for granted that it was easy to interact and they were easily finding the settings, the options in the settings. But you start realizing that they don't, and they cannot find it. So you have to iterate your design. So you're not even in the detail right now. You're just some sketches or some wireframes. So another problem that could happen, and this has happened to us, this is RetailMe. It's a software from JDA. And they build this thing for assortment planners. So assortment planners, their job is to build assortment. So I have to do next season boots. So I built this assortment for the next season. And what we did is say, oh, well, what is interesting would be to have scores for each of them. And the scores are telling how well they're gonna sell, each one in this assortment. So if it's almost 100, that means that it's gonna sell very well. And if it's below 50, it's gonna not sell that well. But not all of your items are gonna be 100. And this was tough for the people to understand. They kind of get what we're trying to do, but they were not trusting it because they couldn't understand what this number really was and why it was that number and how could they make it better. So this is something that you realize doing the user testing. And we came up with, oh, well, we need some kind of data visualization, a simple one that would help them understand, oh, which attribute made this item this value, so this score, let's say. So you see, even the user testing could provide you more input on new problems that could arrive. And finally, detailed design, and this is where you go with really everything. So this is the same example. So you're trying to follow the style guide because we are a big company. We're trying to follow the same style for all of software so that it becomes a family of software and not everything different. So you start putting the style guide in. You're trying to make the colors and make the little small interactions that you didn't do and the form and all those little details. So this is the example 4, and this is the other example, right? So you can become really more loose and go with really more of exploration of the colors and everything. So do I have time, or am I kind of? Oh, well, no, okay, this is the pattern, so it's more complex. So I'm gonna skip that and go directly to questions.
So do we have questions for Ignacio? Est-ce qu'on a des questions pour Ignacio? Oui.
I'm sorry, did I understand that the program is called RetailMe? The program
Sorry.
that you show the assortment planners, is it called RetailMe? What is the?
Yeah, it changed name. I don't know. The marketing team at JDA is really, but it was RetailMe. It was RetailMe for a long time. Yes.
So, but this is not one of your programs. It's not.
Yes, this is one of the programs sold by JDA right now.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup à Ignacio, c'était très intéressant. Vous pouvez toujours le parler pendant le reste du temps ou bien à la fin. On va reprendre ça. On va continuer avec le prochain. Merci. Merci.